Okay, so you want to take a deep dive into social exchange theory. You send over a bunch of excerpts from the Wikipedia article. I guess we're going for like a clear, concise overview, right?
Yeah, it's a really interesting theory, but it can sound a bit cold at first.
Mm,
All this talk about costs and benefits and maximizing rewards. But for someone with a STEM background, I mean, it kind of makes sense, right? Like, there's a logic there.
yeah, definitely.
It's like applying an economic model to social interaction.
Exactly. And what I find fascinating is how broadly it can be applied. We tend to think of exchange in terms of money or goods, but social exchange theory says it goes way beyond that.
Absolutely. Even things like social approval or knowledge or emotional support, those are all part of the equation.
It's about the give and take in any relationship, really, like why we choose to collaborate with certain people or why we stay in a particular research area, even if it's frustrating sometimes.
Yeah, think about your latest research project, for instance. What did you get out of it? Was it recognition, advancing knowledge, or maybe just the satisfaction of solving a problem?
Well, yeah, but there were definitely costs, too.
Of course, there are always costs.
Time and effort, for sure.
Yeah, and sometimes you have to deal with, difficult personalities or setbacks. The theory would suggest that we only stick with it if the rewards outweigh those costs or if the alternatives are even worse.
Right, and that brings us to this idea of comparison level, right? It's like what we expect to get out of a relationship or an interaction. If reality falls short, well, we're dissatisfied.
Exactly. And then there's the comparison level for alternatives, what we think we could get from other relationships or projects.
That explains why sometimes people stay in situations that aren't really working for them.
Yeah, sometimes the known bad is preferable to the unknown, maybe. Right.
It makes me think of how some researchers get stuck in certain areas. The field might be stagnant, but it's familiar. Stepping outside of that comfort zone is risky. The rewards are uncertain, the costs could be high.
It's a great illustration of how these theoretical concepts actually play out in the real world of STEM. And speaking of theory, the Wikipedia article mentions a bunch of big names associated with social exchange theory. We don't have to go through them all, but two are particularly relevant to our deep dive today: George Homans and Richard Emerson.
Right? Holman's, he was one of the pioneers, wasn't he? Really focused on the individual's drive to maximize their rewards.
Yeah, he emphasized the individualistic nature of exchange, how we're all kind of wired to seek out those rewards.
And then Emerson came along and brought in the idea of power independence.
Exactly. He argued that the more dependent someone is on you for resources, the more power you have in that relationship.
That's so relevant in academia, especially in the relationship between a PhD student and their advisor.
Hmm.
I mean, the student needs the advisor's guidance, their approval, to move forward in their career. That creates a power imbalance.
And it's not always a bad thing. Power can be used ethically for mentorship, right? Or it can be misused and lead to exploitation. The key takeaway is that social exchange theory helps us see these dynamics so we can navigate them more effectively.
So we've got this idea of exchange happening on multiple levels. But what exactly are we exchanging? The Wikipedia article mentions both tangible and intangible things.
Right. Money's an obvious one, but it gets really interesting when you consider the less quantifiable stuff.
Like, give me an example.
Think about your collaborations. You're exchanging expertise, of course, but you're also exchanging things like social approval, that feeling of respect from your peers, or even just emotional support, having someone to bounce ideas off of.
And sometimes those intangible rewards, they're even more motivating than anything concrete. For me, it's that feeling of contributing to a shared goal of being part of a team, pushing the boundaries of knowledge. That's a huge driver.
And social exchange theory helps us to understand that those less tangible exchanges are just as real and just as influential as the ones we can easily measure.
It definitely adds a layer of nuance to how we view success in STEM. It's not just about publications or grant money. It's about this whole network of exchanges. Which raises an interesting question. How do we ensure those exchanges are fair? The concept of equity comes up quite a bit in the Wikipedia article.
And it's a crucial point. People don't just want any reward. They want a fair exchange for their efforts. If you're consistently contributing more to a project but you aren't getting the same level of recognition or benefit, you're going to feel dissatisfied.
All right, and that dissatisfaction can actually damage the collaboration.
Exactly. It erodes trust.
I've seen that happen with early career researchers. They often end up doing a lot of the grunt work but don't get sufficient credit or authorship. Over time, that can breed resentment.
It's a reminder that building successful relationships in STEM, whether it's collaborations or mentoring, requires careful consideration of fairness, and reciprocity. It's not just about individual gain, it's about creating systems where everyone feels valued and benefits from the exchange. Now, how do we actually see social exchange theory play out, in STEM specifically? Let's take scientific collaboration, for example. It's essential, but it doesn't always work smoothly.
Right. There's all those personalities, competing priorities, pressure to get results.
Exactly. And the theory kind of helps us look at it through this lens of costs and rewards. For the researchers involved, the rewards could be advancing knowledge or getting published in a prestigious journal.
Yeah, maybe even getting future funding. Yeah.
Exactly. But to get there, you got to invest time, effort, maybe even compromise on your own research interests to align with the project.
That's like a constant balancing act.
It is. And that's where managing expectations and equity becomes super important. Like, clear communication is key. Establishing who does what, how authorship is determined, those shared goals.
It's like you're creating this unspoken social contract for the whole collaboration. Laying it all out can prevent a lot of those misunderstandings down the line.
Oh, absolutely, especially in high-stakes projects. Now, another area where this theory is super insightful is in mentorship. It's vital in STEM, but a lot of it operates on unspoken rules.
Yeah, the currency being exchanged isn't always so clear-cut.
Right. What exactly are we giving and receiving in these relationships? For the mentee, it's often access to knowledge, guidance, networks.
A mentor can open doors, right?
Exactly. They can vouch for you, help you navigate all those unspoken rules of academia. Super valuable, especially early in your career.
And on the flip side, for the mentor, I think the rewards are often more intrinsic, like seeing someone they invested in succeed.
Yeah, that sense of contributing to the future of the field. Legacy building.
Exactly. But even in these relationships, there are still costs, right?
Of course, for the mentor, they invest time, share their expertise. Sometimes they have to deal with seeing their mentees struggle or make mistakes.
And for the mentee, there's pressure to live up to expectations, that vulnerability of asking for help.
It's a really complex dynamic, and that's why open communication is so key. Just like with collaborations, both sides need to know the goals, what they're willing to put in, what they expect to get out of it.
It all goes back to that power independence we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
Not just between advisors and students, but on a much larger scale.
Yeah.
Like funding bodies, institutions, the whole pecking order in research.
Right. Emerson's work on power dependence is key here. The more dependent someone is on you, the more power you have. Take funding, for example.
Yeah, so much research relies on grants and funding from these agencies and universities.
Exactly, and that gives those who control the money a lot of power.
It's like having a monopoly on something essential.
And that power dynamic influences everything. What research is prioritized, who gets promoted, even the culture of labs and departments.
It's like you have to learn the unspoken rules of the game. How to get funding, connect with the right people, advocate for your work.
It's true. Even amazing research can get lost if you don't know how to navigate these structures. So let's bring it down to a smaller level. Within research groups themselves, even there are hierarchies and exchanges happening all the time.
The most obvious is the relationship between the PI, the principal investigator, and the people in their lab.
Yeah, the PI often controls funding, publications, the whole research direction.
Right. Which creates a power dynamic with the postdocs and the grad students.
It's like a mini version of the whole academic power structure.
Yeah.
The PI can guide and support their team, but there's also potential for problems.
Yeah, exploitation, favoritism, even just a mismatch in expectations, it can get toxic pretty quickly.
Exactly. So understanding those dynamics from both sides, the PI and the lab members, is so important for creating a good research environment.
This has been so interesting looking at how this theory applies to STEM. Collaboration, mentorship, power structures, even just how research groups function.
Yeah.
We've talked about research labs and the power structures of academia, but there's one aspect of STEM culture I'm really curious about: knowledge sharing. In such a competitive field where knowledge is power, freely sharing your findings seems almost counterintuitive.
It is. There's this tension between wanting to publish first, get those patents, be seen as the top expert, and then the need for science to progress through open exchange. How do we reconcile those two things?
Well, look at some of the biggest breakthroughs in recent decades. The Human Genome Project, CRISPR, the advances in AI, those are all huge collaborative efforts. They relied on sharing data, findings, even preliminary stuff.
Great examples. The rewards of sharing knowledge might not always benefit the individual right away, but for the community, for society, they can be enormous.
And even on a smaller scale, think about conferences and workshops, even just those informal chats over coffee. They're all about exchanging ideas, getting feedback, sparking new collaborations. It's not always about the next big paper. Sometimes it's about those little steps forward that come from bouncing ideas off each other.
And social exchange theory helps us see that those informal exchanges are still driven by that give and take. You're sharing something, but hoping to gain something too.
Insights, new perspectives, maybe even future collaborators, like this constant flow of intellectual currency. The more you put in, the more you get out.
Yeah.
Which brings us to peer review. It's such a cornerstone of scientific publishing, but it relies so heavily on people volunteering their time.
Peer review is a really unique example of social exchange. Researchers are donating their time to evaluate their colleagues' work, often anonymously. There's no money in it, very little recognition. So what's the motivation?
I guess there's a sense of contributing to the quality of research. You're making sure that only the best work gets published.
It's like a form of gatekeeping, and it takes a lot of effort. But there's also that intellectual stimulation of engaging with new research. You're learning, keeping up with your field.
It's like continuing education, but with the added responsibility of giving feedback that could make or break someone's career.
It's a high-stakes system for sure. It's not perfect, but through the lens of social exchange theory, we can see that it's driven by these complex motivations, both personal and for the good of the community.
This whole conversation has been a good reminder that even though STEM is all about data and objectivity, it's still a human endeavor. It's all about relationships, power dynamics, and these unspoken rules of exchange.
And even though social exchange theory might seem overly simplistic sometimes, it's a really useful tool for understanding those dynamics. It helps us see why people do what they do
It makes us think about the costs and benefits of our own choices.
and how to create systems that are fair and rewarding for everyone.
So for our listener out there, we encourage you to apply this to your own experiences in STEM. Think about the exchanges you're a part of, the power dynamics at play, and how you contribute to the shared knowledge in your field.
It's not just about individual gain. It's about building a better STEM community, one that's more vibrant and more equitable, sharing knowledge, being willing to collaborate, and creating systems that foster trust.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. We hope it's given you some new insights into this fascinating world of STEM.